For 40 years, this country has followed a Thatcherite approach to capitalism. As a result, industries have closed, large British companies have been sold overseas, and huge disparities have grown up between the rich and the poor, between different parts of the United Kingdom. But now Mrs Thatcher's free market, on-your-bike approach to capitalism is being challenged. And not only from the prospect of the Corbynistas coming to power after the next election. It has come under attack from the new face of the Tory party, their leader in Scotland, Ruth Davidson. Now, she was virtually the only leading Tory to come out of the election with any credit. And now she has launched a campaign which will be a massive challenge for traditional Tories. She says capitalism has had some big successes, but people are clearly losing faith in its ability to make their lives better, and so it needs a reboot. Now, I've never voted Tory, but if Ruth Davidson could seriously come up with viable policies to counter these concerns, I could support her. Mind you, she might find out she's in the wrong party long before then.
Greg, you sort of said my argument there before I even had the chance to sort of counter what your original argument was. I love Ruth Davidson and I love her politics, and I think she's such a breath of fresh air on the political arena. Problem is, she's in the wrong party. I do not think she can get that agenda through with the Tories. There are far too many powerful, extreme right backbenchers who would make sure this sort of economics didn't get through.
Well, I think it's worth...
Also, she can't become a leader of the party because she doesn't have a seat.
But let me just, for 1 minute, expand a bit more of what she said, because I do think it's quite profound. She says, how does a teenager living in a pit town with no pit, a steel town with no steel, or a factory town with no factory see capitalism working for them?
Yep.
She goes on, is the only route for social advancement a degree, student debt, and then moving to London, knowing there is precisely zero chance of saving enough to ever own their own front door? Or is it staying put in a community that feels like it's being hollowed out from the inside, with a high street marked by the repetitive studding of charity shop, pub, bookies, and empty lot? Now, she captured something there that we've all seen.
She has,
She's captured something. The question is, what do you do about it? How will she do it? But at least it's somebody who's saying, look, this is the real problem. The real problem that we've got two Britons. And they're often a city and a town apart.
She wants to...
And the divide is growing.
Yeah, that piece that I read, it's like she wants to reboot capitalism in the same way Blair rebooted socialism, and it really resonated with me when she said that
Keynesian economics, isn't it?
And it really resonated when she was talking about the rise of Corbyn here and Trump in America, and she said it's totally understandable because it is born out of poverty and despair and hopelessness and a feeling of injustice. And it just reminded me, the only thing that Trump said during his campaign that resonated with me was he talked about the rusted out factories scattered like tombstones. Now that's because globalisation took those factories and put them somewhere else, cheaper labour, whatever. And we know that has happened here. And I just think that this is fantastic. Capitalism currently makes individuals rich and keeps workers poor. She's talking about doing the opposite of that, taking some of the profits of capitalism and put it into society and sharing the wealth. It's a great.
She's also talking about idea. A bigger role for government.
She is.
She is saying, look, government has got to intervene. But we've had 40 years, basically, of Labour and Tory who didn't intervene. And look what we've ended up with.
Greg,
government will have to intervene.
What she's talking about is Keynesian economics. We agree with her. We love her. But I'm just saying she's in the wrong party. It's not going to get through with the Tories.
Right.
It's going to burst.
Right. Now, June, you talk about the extreme right backbenchers within the Conservative Party. What do you mean extreme right? They're not extreme right as you mean.
They're very right. I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg would go for this.
Queen Ruth of Scotland gave a great speech. No question about it. But it is, in a sense, what you'd expect to hear from Jeremy Corbyn. Let's be honest about it. There's no solutions.
That's why they like it.
There's no solutions. There's just... And it very nicely written, no question about it, nicely compared by Carol. The reality is, I love capitalism. Capitalism works. The desk we're sitting at, the clothes you're wearing, the microphones that are here, the camera over there, everything absolutely works. Could it be improved? Yes, of course it could be improved. Should we share it around a little bit more? Yes, we probably should. But it is ridiculous to say that capitalism is over because the taxes are paying for the hospitals that are treating the people who are sick and watching on television now.
She's in favour of capitalism. capitalism. She actually says she's in favour of people enriching themselves, but not in the way that bankers do, and not in the way that the big corporations
should be bloody grateful for the bankers. The bankers are the people of the fluid and the oil that will grease the machine and get this economy.
Not the size of their bonuses.
But you go. I mean, I was recently in South Wales and went to some of the old pit towns.
Right.
And it's a tragedy. They're terrible.
It's a tragedy.
And I'm sure that's replicated all over the country.
But where was the solution, Greg? I know it's a tragedy.
No, I agree with you there. But and it's a difficult... I mean, there isn't an instant solution. There clearly isn't. But it's interesting that someone in the Conservative Party is actually identifying this issue.
We must get Michelle. How is that different from the famous Just About Managing speech? When Theresa May says, I want to be there for the just about... She's actually managed to turn just about managing into a mantra, into a lifestyle. She's just about managing herself now. No, but it's exactly the same.
She talked about conservatism for all.
Yes, it's the same.
But there have been no policies to reflect that. And I think the difference is that Ruth Davidson would actually bring about policies.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, I find this 5th out of 7, by the way. just to set that... I'll be UKIP.
You beat the Monster Looney... The raving Monster Looney Party.
They weren't even standing.
Oh, thank God, you'd have been 6th.
By the way, it's 5th more than you lot have ever had. So if you don't mind...
No, it's not true. I once stood the GLC in Putney, and I stood for the Labour Party, and I turned a very good Labour seat into a very strong Tory.
Anyway, coming back to the topic in hand. So I found this speech fascinating, and I feel like she reflects various situations very well. It's an interesting speech, and I think a lot of people should read it. But to a few people's points, first of all, there are no solutions. Second of all, she talks about pit towns. So I was saying before, my nana was from Wattstown in Wales, in the Rhondda Valleys, and when you go there, it's not a thriving place for a young person to live and to be. And as I've mentioned before, I'm from Hull. I had to leave Hull for work. I had to get on my bike and find work in various different places. And Hull was never the same, has never been the same since it lost its fishing industry. Yeah. So I know what those towns are like. But a few things that I'd say is, when Ruth is a very strong Remainer, and when I think of, for example, the steel industries, where when steel industries have collapsed some of the factories, they've lost a lot of jobs. We couldn't intervene in those industries, one of the reasons being EU regulation. So I find this quite interesting that someone that's very strongly wants to stay within the EU is also arguing for UK government intervention, because to me those two are at odds with each other. That's the first point. The second point I want to make is she talks a lot about people. If you're, working in a city and you've lost your industry, do you have to get onto your bike to another city? You could be entrepreneurial. You could create another job for yourself, or a job for yourself, or an industry for yourself.
Not everybody is.
No, of course not everybody is. But entrepreneurs, at the moment, they gravitate towards places like London. So a lot of the new job creations and all the rest of it happens in these kind of metropolitan cities.
They're not going to the Rhondda Valley then, Michelle, are they?
Well, that's her point, though. Isn't that her point? We need to create an environment where businesses will thrive in places like the Rhondda Valley. So entrepreneurs would be attracted to those places.
Historically, you did that with public money.
Yeah.
You actually spent public money to try to build an industry in a particular area. Now, you could argue, well, that as soon as that, and I think there's some evidence for this, as soon as that money went away, the industries disappeared. And that therefore they were being... But that is the sort of discussion we're going to have in the future.
Yeah. But industries change as well, don't they? So as a government, I guess what you need to have is a very clear industrial strategy. What industry is strategically important to this country going forward? I would argue...
where do we place them?
Exactly.
Around the country.
That's part of the argument of why Corbyn doesn't believe in the EU, because he thinks that actually you needed to do more intervention in this society, and the EU stopped you doing it. What she says in this speech is, this can't be done on a national basis, it's got to be done internationally. So in other words, it would have had to have been an agreement within the EU. And let's not kid ourselves, they're all suffering from the same thing.
We're all suffering from it. This is happening in America, it's happening throughout the West. So actually she's right, it's got to be a collective approach.
She's also addressing how we see capitalism. Currently, capitalism exploits the working classes. That's why they despise it, because there's nothing in it.
The current form of capitalism. You can have inclusive capitalism. Which is why, I know, but the current form that we have now, and it's why the working classes despise it, because there's nothing in it for them. There isn't.
So we have to make it so that they do get something out of capitalism. They do get some of its rewards.